Welcome everyone to this episode of the Women in Technology Spotlight. Today I have with me Elena Krasteva. She is a Senior Cloud Solution Architect at VMware for VMware Cloud on AWS. Welcome, Elena.
Hi, Ronke. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming on my series. I'm really happy to have you here today. Maybe as a first question, would you like to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Maybe we'd start with where I live now. So I currently live in the UK. I'm based just outside of London, but I'm originally from Bulgaria. So I'm born and raised in Bulgaria, and I moved to the UK when I was 18 to pursue my undergrad degree here at Hull University. So I graduated in 2012 with a degree in international business. Mm-hmm. But besides that, a little bit more about myself, maybe what I like doing. I like some sports. I like reading. I recently started playing tennis, which is something I really enjoy. And yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Thank you for this very interesting background. So you grew up in Bulgaria and moved to the UK just for your studies, right? Tell me a little bit about life in Bulgaria, how you grew up, what kind of school you went to, maybe a little bit about your family. Do you have brothers and sisters? What do your parents do?
Great. I'm an only child, actually. I'm an only child, and I grew up in a very small town in the southern part of Bulgaria. My mom is a maths teacher and my dad used to work in construction. Mm-hmm. So it's a very, I have a very small family, but very close family. And I went to my primary and my primary school was a generic school that basically my mom worked at. And my secondary school was a specialist school, and that sounds very grand, but basically the education system in Bulgaria, after year 7 at school, you can choose what you want to do, whether you wanted to study through a generic high school degree or whether you wanted to specialize in something. And it could be anything. It could be languages, maths, economics, performance arts, anything that you might feel is your domain to specialize in. So I went to a mathematics high school. I studied maths and languages. Afterwards I decided that it would be great if I could travel a little bit more, experience a different country. And my parents were supportive enough to say, okay, let's go with it. And that's how I ended up in the UK.
So you went to a high school that was with a focus on math. I assume your mother started your interest in math since she was a math teacher. So that's already a focus on STEM. Like a lot of women I talked to didn't actually specialize until later. So what triggered your interest from math, which is more like natural sciences, and to going into something with technology? What happened there?
Right. So it's true. My mom has probably a good influence on me liking maths and science, but actually they really wanted me to study languages. They were attached to literature, and this is something that I didn't enjoy. I much more enjoyed maths, science, physics. It was definitely a far more interesting thing to do. There was a tiny little bit of programming as well. I'm not a programmer, but that was interesting because it was a very logical thing to do. It makes you think in a very logical way. And so it's something I enjoyed. It's like solving a puzzle. That's how I ended up in my math school. But then I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, because it was at the time when I thought that whatever you study at university, that is what you have to do and choose as your career. And not many 16, 17-year-olds know what they want to do. So I went into a more generic degree of international business because I thought that was something that I could it's something that could become very transferable across countries and different fields. And I thought, if I then decide I know what I want to do, I can do another degree or find something else. But this was the generic, I want to find my place sort of degree.
Yeah, I understand. It's very difficult when you have no clear idea of, for example, jobs in IT, to say, okay, this is what I want to do and this is what I'll study to get there. Because a lot of the things that we do now were not even available a couple of years ago. So I understand choosing fields where it's very clear what you will do afterwards. So I liked the part where you said your parents would have preferred you to do something with literature, because I know that you enjoy reading and you also from time to time join our book club. So did you have a lot of different talents? Were you good at language and at math, or what was it like?
Well, I think I was good at language because I think it's primarily because I started from a very young age. Obviously, English isn't my first language, but I started studying when I was very, very young. And probably about 4 years old, maybe, is when I started having my first lessons in English. And funnily enough, that was because my mom, she has a degree as a maths teacher with a second degree as a physics teacher. So it's maths and physics, but she then did a qualification in IT to also be qualified to teach IT. And that was sometime in the late 90s before I was the late 80s before I was born. And she thought she didn't speak English at all. And she saw how difficult it was for her to understand how important IT is going to be for the future, and how computers were basically going to become an everyday part of our life. And she thought, well, if I have a child, they will know English. And that's how it started. Hence why I started from such a young age. But was I great at languages? I don't know. I probably did a little bit. We tried with French and German and all sorts of other languages, but this is the one that really stuck.
It's so interesting that your mother basically already had all the requisites to do the job that you're doing now. So she had basically already in the 80s done all the education you would need to be a woman in IT. And then
she didn't know.
And then you went and somehow, I can't say fulfill your dream because I don't know what her dream was, but kind of took that a step further. And interestingly, after taking a deviation with international business. So how did you get from international business to being at VMware? What happened?
Oh, that's a great question. So my degree when I got accepted at university, I got accepted with a gap year. So a year with professional experience. It was, I think, the right title. It was international business with professional experience.
Okay.
And that means that after my second, so typically in the UK, a bachelor degree is 3 years long. But what you can do is you can take a gap year after year 2 and either do an internship, so find a job at an industry, or my university also allowed us, and I believe many others do as well, to take a year abroad as a at a partner university. So you're still studying the same thing, you're just doing it somewhere else in the world. Both looked great, and I really wanted to do both, but I was only allowed to choose one. So since I was an international student already, I thought I'd go for a year in industry. And I've managed to find an internship at an IT company. And are we allowed to say? I guess it's going to be on LinkedIn. So yes, I found my first internship at HP. And that's how I got into IT. But my internship was focused on, back in the day when HP was still one very, very big company, I worked in what was called a personal systems group. And so that was the place where it was the BU, if you like, that was dedicated to all personal computing. So tablets, laptops, desktop computers, retail point of sale, that kind of personal to consumer electronic devices. Yeah. So it was fantastic, and throughout I've learned so much. I was involved in so many different projects. The team was great, and towards the end of my internship, one of my final tasks was to build a room, so a showroom basically for that technology. So we had this glass room on the ground floor of the office with different shelves and laptops all over. We had like desktop computers, and the head of pre-sales at the time, he was working on basically synchronizing all of the computers together, all of the laptops together with some, alongside with marketing, with nice flashy marketing messages. It was the place where customers would come in to explore the entire range. And I found that fascinating because I thought, like, how are you doing this? How are you, how can you do, like, probably we're talking 50 devices, showing the same thing on the screen at the same time? And he thought, well, it's just this, program that syncs everything together, and it's running off a server upstairs. And I thought, a server? Like, what do you mean? And this is the first time when I actually walked into a data center room. So he showed me what the data center room looked like, and how what we were doing, 2 floors down, was actually run by one little box in basically in a comms room. And funnily enough, it was running on ESX. And this is how I found about data centers and VMware. And I thought it was completely fascinating because it was literally what made the world go round, but it's something that people don't see or experience directly. So that's how I ended up here.
So I assume you finished your studies, and then did you join immediately after you graduated? Were you one of our graduate program entry people, or what was your path?
No, so I actually joined, I went back to HP. I only joined VMware just under 3 years ago, so maybe 2 years, 7, 8 months. And I went back into HP, but I went back into their, they had me again, enterprise business. And so it was a job, it was, my first role was a TAM role. And again, a technical role that was looking after customers who'd purchased support for their data center infrastructure. And I was basically a TAM. My responsibilities were to put together reports for customers, walk them through firmware upgrades, and so on and so forth. But it was a very steep learning curve because yes, it was probably a good couple of years of studying because, I was going from, of course, as a graduate, but I was coming from an international business degree, and I know some things about IT, to having to know, what firmware is, how things work together, servers, storage systems, all of that important stuff. What's an IP address? How does data go from one place to another? And it was really, really good experience.
So a TAM is a technical account manager for our viewers who are not familiar with this term. So I feel that it's such a big step. I mean, because it's obviously such a career change from going from international business to being a technical person, and the person that the customer will come to and ask questions, detailed questions that you have to answer. So it's really fascinating how you managed to do that. Tell me a little bit about what it felt like to switch from business to IT, whether maybe in terms of were there other struggles except the steep learning curve, were there different people, how was the atmosphere, are there any differences?
My team was really good, actually. They were very supportive, and they were helping me learn. And my first task was to build a business in a box, which was again again, I came across ESXi because I needed to virtualize a server so I can run all of my different machines on top of it, because I only had one server to play with. So for my business in a box. But it was, I was by far the youngest person there, which is normal, I mean, as a graduate. And I was the only female in the team at the time. Very quickly afterwards hired there was another girl that started about 6 months after I did, and it was, you know, I think I joined at the time where the industry was changing. So it wasn't, I didn't find it that difficult, because I think everybody was very supportive, but I would definitely feel sometimes that I was the odd one out on a training course or a meeting where I was the only female in the room.
Yeah, I hear you, because that's an experience that we still sometimes have, that we are the odd one out, the woman in the room, or, you know, just different from others. But I find it interesting and important to say that this is not necessarily something bad. This is just a fact, but obviously, you know, it doesn't have to be a problem. Right?
No, and then no, not at all. And after my TAM, I did the TAM role for maybe just under 2 years, and I moved to what was called then account support manager, which is now equivalent to a customer success manager at VMware. So it was, again, working with customers, trying to you know, making sure that they are making the most out of the service that they've bought. And so I guess this was a slightly less hands-on technical role, but it was focused with on the same accounts and same customers. It was more of a I would say post-sales account manager role of just working with people, working with those customers, making sure they spend what they've bought, they use what they've bought.
Yes. So you joined VMware about 3 years ago, and did you immediately start as a cloud solution architect, or did you? Yeah. Okay. So cloud. That is one of the big topics in IT at the moment. And, you know, there are a couple of big movements. One is cloud, one is maybe security, and great to be part of that. But maybe you would like to tell us a little bit about what you actually do as a cloud solution architect for VMC.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so this was, again, one of the I would say one of the big jumps in my career, because I thought, you know, the concept of hybrid cloud was coming up and people were talking about it for a few years. By that point, I'd gotten some pre-sales experience. And I thought at the time, VMware Cloud on AWS was just starting, was just beginning. It had just only been out for maybe a year and a half, was coming into Europe. And I thought, oh my God, we're talking about hybrid cloud. This is absolutely ingenious, because this is the ultimate hybrid cloud. And what it means is that it's the familiar experience of what customers have been using for the past 20 years, but with all of the added benefits that we talk about in the cloud. So the elastic scale of the cloud, we're talking about access to many hundreds of different services. We're talking about, you know, the speed of innovation, and that customers can start consuming, which is normally very, very difficult if you have to do it with a brand new in a brand new environment. Because let's face it, most people, you know, the majority of skill sets and the majority of established enterprise companies are built on VMware or in a more traditional way. It's not as simple to just, you know, click your fingers and move to the cloud. And I thought that was an ingenious solution, so I thought I really want to be part of it. Luckily, I could. And so my day-to-day job was very much focused on, first of all, learning. It was a very steep learning curve, because there was a lot of networking involved in there. Customers have a lot of questions, as you say, around networking, security. How do I connect? How do I access my workloads once they're there? And because it's the cloud, there are so many possibilities, because each customer is very different. So my primary job, I guess, is to understand what problems they're trying to solve and why they're looking to move, And once they understand that, is about how can we help them, and how can we help them in the most optimal way for their infrastructure. So what kind of connectivity they need? Do we need to consider something else? What services could go alongside their VMware Cloud and AWS infrastructure? Because we have so much more to offer in the cloud BU there as well.
So what is it that you enjoy most about your job? What aspects do you like?
I want to say the people that I work with, and that's both customers and my colleagues and the extended VMware family, because I genuinely love working with people. So that's one of the things I do really like about this job. It's working with people. I am naturally curious, so I love learning, and this is an ever learning. Every day there's something new to learn or to know about our products or the industry or customers. And I love tech. So we had a conversation just before we started about many tens of kind of tech devices around me. I just enjoy it. So yeah, it's kind of, I think the role of a solution architect, or pre-sales in general, encompasses all those three things.
Yeah. I love how you mentioned tech last, because the interesting aspect of all these conversations I've had with women is that contrary to what people think about tech, the whole industry is much more about people and communication, and then tech comes as a solution to certain problems those people have, and it's not tech first and then communication. And so it's interesting that you actually mentioned it in that order, which reflects how our jobs really are. Our jobs are to build relationships and to talk to people and to understand their problems, right? Yeah, and I think that is also something that makes them so well suited for women, because women are very good at communicating. A lot of us listen much better than our male counterparts, and so we are really, how can I say, geared to do these jobs. And I also want to thank you that you took the opportunity to actually come here and show what kind of women do this job and be a role model to others. So one thing I would like to ask you before we wrap it up, because we're already close to the half hour, is there anything you would recommend to young women thinking about going into this field, or watching and not sure whether tech is for them?
Yes, so I would say that tech is a lot more than than the stereotype that we probably have been presented with. Like just a piece of code and a hoodie. This is a stereotype that I don't believe it's true. And there's so much more to technology, from interesting concepts like AI, machine learning. There's infrastructure. We're talking about services, transformational projects, and every single thing that we touch in daily life involves IT in some way, shape, or form, although we don't see or touch it. And so I would say that for anybody who's interested, men or women in IT, just keep an open mind, because the IT industry is much more diverse than you might think. And the second thing is, if you think that you don't have all of the skills that are part of a job, that's okay, because you can learn those, right? I think the right attitude and soft skills are far more important, because tech can be learned, and it's a never-ending learning curve. So I would say just go for it, because it's a really exciting place to be.
Yeah. Thank you. I love that you mentioned this around being able to learn what you need for the job, and that it's more about the attitude. I think that's very important, especially nowadays, where a lot of old technologies are no longer relevant and a lot of new stuff is coming, and we are also constantly learning and upgrading our knowledge. It's not about of course, you have to have an acumen for these things, communication and tech, and a certain love for the job, but that's actually it. You have to have the love, the passion for it. And Is there anything else you would like to share with us before we wrap up, or anything you can think of that you would want women who watch this channel to know?
I would just encourage anybody to explore. I'm assuming that if anybody watches this channel, they're already interested in IT. So I would very much encourage them to explore different options. And if they have any questions, just feel free to get in touch.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you so much for coming on the interview series, and yeah, and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, Ronke. Great to be here. Bye-bye.